I'm just somebody that doesn't like being lied to. It does feel like this was the plan all along. Why didn't you just say that up front? It's not, you didn't have to lie to the people.
The coronation was meant to be perfect, calm, and unforgettable. But a terrifying discovery changed everything in a single moment. William saw what others missed, and it forced him to stop the coronation. What was secretly added to Camilla's royal attire? Why did it carry a meaning no one expected? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the revelation. The morning that felt wrong. The morning of the coronation began with a calm that looked perfect from the outside. Every hallway was polished, every step rehearsed, and every movement planned with care. Soft light filled the palace, touching the walls and reflecting off gold details that had been prepared for months. Staff moved in silence, focused and precise, making sure nothing was out of place. It was a day meant to follow history, a day meant to look smooth and certain. Yet beneath that careful beauty, there was a feeling that did not belong, a quiet tension that could not be easily explained. As the hours moved forward, small whispers began to travel through the rooms. They were not loud, but they were steady, passing from one staff member to another. The whispers were about Camilla's attire. Something about it had changed, and no one could clearly explain when or why. The change had come late, too late for comfort. A dresser, trained to notice the smallest detail, paused when she saw the final piece. The design looked refined and graceful, but there was something unfamiliar in it. It carried a style that felt older, almost like a memory returning without warning. The dresser stepped closer, her eyes moving slowly across the fabric. The stitching was careful, almost too careful, as if someone had taken extra time to make sure every detail held meaning. The patterns were not part of the approved design she had studied before. They curved in ways she had not seen in the official plans. She felt a quiet unease settle in her chest. This was not just a simple change. It felt like something placed there with purpose, something that did not pass through the usual hands or follow the usual rules. At the same time, William arrived with a presence that shifted the air. His steps were steady, but his face carried a tension that stood out against the calm around him. He did not greet anyone for long. His attention moved quickly, searching and focused. When he reached the wardrobe area, his gaze fixed on the attire without hesitation. He studied it in silence, taking in every detail. The room grew still, as if everyone felt the weight of his attention. He did not speak, but it was clear he sensed something deeper than a simple mistake. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked closer. The design did not match what he remembered. He had seen the approved version before, and this was not it. There was a difference that could not be ignored. It was not only about fabric or color, it was about intention. Something about the attire felt placed, not chosen. It carried a message that had not been spoken aloud. The longer he looked, the stronger that feeling became. This was not an accident. This was something done with care, something done with meaning. Around him, the staff tried to remain calm, but their movements slowed. No one wanted to speak first. No one wanted to give an answer they did not fully understand. The silence stretched, filled with quiet worry. The dresser lowered her eyes, unsure if she should step forward or stay still. The whispers from earlier now felt heavier, more real. What had seemed like a small concern was beginning to grow into something much larger. William took a slow breath, still looking at the attire. His mind moved quickly, connecting what he saw with something he could not yet fully name. What was hidden inside the design that no one was meant to see? The design that shouldn't exist. As preparations continued, the quiet concern from earlier did not fade. Instead, it grew stronger, pushing a few trusted aides to take careful action. Without drawing attention, they began to review the royal wardrobe records. These records were detailed and precise, showing every approved design, every fabric choice, and every change made over time. Nothing was supposed to happen without being recorded. That was the rule that kept everything in order. The aides moved through the records slowly, checking each detail against the attire that now waited for the ceremony. At first, everything seemed normal. The earlier design was there, clearly approved months before. It showed a structure that was known and expected. But as they compared it to what had been prepared, the difference became clear. The design in front of them did not match the one on record. The changes were not small. They were deep enough to shift the meaning of the entire piece. One aide leaned closer, tracing the lines of the approved design with careful eyes. Then she looked back at the altered version. The patterns did not align. The flow of the fabric had changed. There were elements added that did not belong to the original plan. These were not simple adjustments for style or fit. They were intentional additions, placed with thought. And none of them had passed through the official process. A senior aide, who had worked within the palace for many years, stepped forward to examine the design more closely. Her experience allowed her to notice things others might miss. As her eyes moved across the altered attire, her expression changed. She paused, her breath catching slightly, as if something had reached her from the past. The room seemed to grow quieter around her. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she studied the patterns again, making sure she was not mistaken. The curves, the stitching, the way the fabric carried its shape. These details felt familiar to her, not from recent plans, but from something much older. Something she had only heard about in private discussions, never in public records. A memory formed in her mind, clear and steady. Years ago, there had been a quiet conversation about a future design. It had not been official. It had not been written down in the same way as other plans. It was a personal vision, shared in trust. That vision had come from Diana. It was meant to be something symbolic, something that would carry meaning if a certain moment ever came. But that moment never arrived, and the design was never used. The realization settled slowly but firmly. The altered attire now before them carried those same elements. Not exactly the same, but close enough to be recognized, close enough to feel unmistakable. This was not a coincidence. This was something taken from a place that had been private and untouched. The design was never meant for anyone else. The senior aide stepped back slightly, her face still calm, but her thoughts moving quickly. She understood the weight of what this meant. It felt prepared, shaped to sound right, yet missing something real. If the design truly came from that past vision, then it should not exist here, not in this form, not on this day. It had crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed, and that made the situation far more serious than anyone had expected. The information began to spread quietly among a small circle of trusted staff. No one raised their voice, no one made sudden movements, but the understanding passed from one person to another, growing stronger with each careful word. How did a private vision from long ago find its way into this moment? Diana's forgotten vision. Behind closed doors, the quiet tension began to take a clearer shape. What first felt like a simple mistake now revealed something deeper, something carefully hidden beneath layers of time. A small group of trusted aides gathered in a private room, speaking in low tones, their faces serious and focused. They were no longer guessing. They were searching for the truth. And as they placed each detail together, a forgotten story slowly began to return. Many years ago, there had been a quiet moment that very few people knew about. It was not part of any official record. It was not written into palace plans or shared with the public. It was something personal, something gentle and thoughtful. Diana had once spoken about a possible future, a moment that might one day come. In that moment, she had described a coronation look she would choose if she were there to see it. It was not just about beauty, it was about meaning. The design she imagined was filled with soft symbolism. Every line, every curve, and every stitch carried a purpose. It reflected her sense of grace, her understanding of history, and her quiet strength. It was meant to show both tradition and change, blending the past with a hopeful future. The idea was shared only with her personal designer, someone she trusted deeply. Together, they spoke about details that would never leave that private space. But that vision was never brought to life. Time moved forward, and the moment it was meant for never arrived. The design remained hidden, untouched, and unspoken. It became something that lived only in memory, something that belonged to a story that ended too soon. No one expected it to return, and no one imagined it would ever be seen again. Yet now, as the aides studied the altered attire, those same details began to appear. The patterns, the flow, the careful balance between elegance and meaning, it was all there. Not perfectly copied, but close enough to feel real, close enough to carry the same quiet message. The connection was no longer a guess. It was something they could feel, something they could see with their own eyes. When William was informed, the weight of it reached him at once. The moment the connection was explained, everything inside him grew still. He remembered the stories, the small details that had once been shared in trust. He understood what that design meant, not just as a piece of clothing, but as something deeply personal. It was never meant to belong to anyone else. It was never meant to stand in this place. The thought settled heavily in his mind. This was not an accident. This was not a simple choice made without care. Someone had reached into something private and brought it into the present. Someone had taken a vision that was never meant to be used and placed it where it would be seen by all. That realization made everything feel sharper, more urgent. William's gaze remained steady as he looked again at the altered attire. What once seemed like an unfamiliar design now carried a deeper meaning. Who had the power to reach into such a private memory and bring it back to life? The secret request. As the truth about the design settled, the need for answers became stronger. The palace could not move forward without understanding how such a change had taken place. Quietly and carefully, an internal probe began. It was handled by a small group, chosen for their trust and discretion. They moved without drawing attention, following each step of the process that led to the altered attire. Every record was examined again, this time with deeper focus. They looked beyond the final design and traced the path of decisions that brought it into place. The process was meant to be clear and controlled, with each change approved and documented. But as they followed the trail, they began to notice something unusual. There were gaps where there should have been clarity. Certain approvals were missing. Certain steps had been passed over. The usual path had been changed, quietly and carefully. It was not done in a way that would draw immediate attention. Instead, it was done with precision, as if someone understood exactly how to move without being seen. This was not careless, this was deliberate. As they continued, one detail stood out above the rest. A request had been made. It was not recorded in the usual way, but it left a trace, small yet clear enough to follow. The request was specific. It called for the design to be altered, not slightly, but in a way that would reshape its meaning. And the source of that request was not distant or unknown. The evidence pointed directly to Camilla. The realization was heavy, but it could not be ignored. This was not a decision made by a distant staff member or a quiet mistake within the system. It came from a place of authority, from someone who had the power to make such a change. It carried a style that felt older. The room grew still as the truth settled among those who had uncovered it. When the matter was approached carefully, Camilla responded with calm control. She explained that the change was meant as a tribute. It was presented as a gesture of respect, as something intended to connect the past with the present. The idea was simple on the surface, even gentle in its tone. It suggested unity, a way to honor what had come before. But something about the explanation did not feel right. It was too smooth, too prepared, as if the words had been arranged long before the question was asked. There was no hesitation, no sign of surprise. Everything was delivered with quiet confidence. Yet it lacked the depth that such a choice would carry. Those who listened felt the difference, even if they could not fully explain it. When William heard the explanation, he did not respond immediately. Time moved forward, and the moment it was meant for never arrived. The design remained hidden, untouched, and unspoken. He listened, taking in every word, every detail. But inside, the pieces did not fit together. The design was too specific, too deeply connected to something personal. It was not something that could be chosen lightly, not something that could simply be called a tribute. The more he considered it, the less it made sense. A true tribute would have been open, acknowledged, and respectful of its meaning. This was hidden, altered, and placed without clear approval. It carried a different intention, one that was not being spoken aloud. William's doubt grew stronger with each passing moment. The explanation remained the same, but it did not answer the deeper question. It did not explain why such a private vision had been used. It did not explain why the process had been changed to allow it. And it did not explain why it had been done in silence. If it was not truly a tribute, then what was the real reason behind the change? William connects the truth. William stood still, yet his thoughts moved with quiet speed. What once felt unclear now began to form a complete picture in his mind. The design was not just something taken from the past. It carried a deeper meaning, one that reached far beyond fabric and shape. Every detail he had seen, every piece of information he had been given, now connected in a way that could not be ignored. He looked again at the altered attire, but this time with a different understanding. The patterns were not simply beautiful. They were chosen with care, shaped to reflect something specific. The flow of the design was not random. It followed an idea, one that had once belonged to Diana alone. That realization settled heavily within him, bringing a sense of clarity that was both sharp and painful. Diana's vision had never been about appearance alone. It had been about identity, about her place, and about a future she had imagined but never reached. The design carried quiet strength, a balance between grace and meaning. It was meant to stand as a reflection of who she was and what she would have become. It was personal, deeply tied to her story. For that same vision to now appear in this moment, worn by someone else, changed its meaning entirely. It was no longer just a design. It became a statement, not a spoken one, but one that could be seen and understood without words.
The more William thought about it, the clearer it became. This was not an act of respect. It was something far more deliberate. He felt a shift within himself as the truth settled. If Camilla stepped forward wearing that design, it would not simply pass as a tribute. It would create an image, a quiet message placed before everyone watching. It would suggest a connection that did not exist, a continuity that was not real. It would place her in a position that echoed a path Diana never had the chance to walk. The idea was subtle, yet powerful. It did not need to be explained. It would be seen, felt, and understood in silence. That was what made it so strong. It was not loud or direct, but it carried weight. It would shape how the moment was remembered, how the story would be told in years to come. William's expression remained calm, but inside, the weight of the realization grew. This was not about honoring the past. It was about shaping the present. It was about placing a message where it could not be easily questioned, and once seen, it could not be undone. He began to understand the full meaning of what was happening. This was about position. It was about showing, in a quiet and lasting way, who now stood in a place that had once been imagined for someone else. The design was not just worn, it was used carefully and purposefully to create that image. The thought brought a sense of urgency. This moment was meant to be clear and true, not shaped by something hidden beneath the surface. If the ceremony continued as planned, that image would be set. It would become part of history, something that could not be easily changed or explained away later. The truth was no longer hidden. It stood clearly before him, waiting for him to act. Would he allow the moment to move forward, or would he stop it before it was too late? The coronation is stopped. The palace moved closer to the height of the ceremony, each step following the next with careful timing. Guests were seated, the atmosphere filled with quiet anticipation. Every detail had been prepared, every moment planned to unfold with grace and precision. From the outside, everything remained perfect, untouched by the tension that had been building behind closed doors. But within that calm, William carried a decision that would change everything. He moved with purpose, his steps steady as he made his way toward the center of the unfolding moment. Those around him noticed the shift, though they could not yet understand it. His presence carried a weight that did not belong to celebration. It carried something stronger, something that demanded attention. As the ceremony reached the point where it could no longer turn back, William stepped forward. His action was firm, clear, and impossible to ignore. The movement alone was enough to stop the flow of events. What had been moving smoothly came to a sudden pause, like a quiet break in a carefully written line. The room changed instantly. A soft wave of confusion spread through the gathered crowd. Faces turned, eyes searching for an explanation that did not come. The calm that had filled the space moments before was replaced by uncertainty. No one spoke loudly, yet the silence felt heavier than any sound. The shift was undeniable. Officials looked toward one another, unsure of what step to take next. The carefully planned sequence had been interrupted in a way no one had expected. Every movement slowed, every decision held in place as they waited for direction. The order that had guided the ceremony no longer held its usual certainty. William stood firm, his expression steady. He did not rush to explain. He did not soften the moment. His decision had been made, and it was clear in the way he held himself. There was no hesitation left, no doubt in his stance. The ceremony would not continue. Nearby, Camilla remained composed. Her posture did not change, her expression calm and controlled. Yet the space around her carried a tension that could be felt without words. The altered attire, now fully understood for what it represented, seemed heavier in that moment. It was no longer just part of the ceremony. It had become the center of something much larger.
Those closest to the situation understood what others could not see. The reason for the interruption was not random. It was not a sudden mistake or a simple delay. It was a choice made to stop something that could not be allowed to happen. The meaning behind it remained unspoken, but it was clear enough to those who knew. Time seemed to slow as the moment stretched. The ceremony, once certain and steady, now stood still. Every eye waited, every breath held in quiet expectation. Yet no public explanation came. The truth remained inside the palace walls, held within a small circle of understanding. William's decision had changed the path of the day. What was meant to move forward without pause had been brought to a complete stop. The image that was about to be created would not be allowed to form. The message that was meant to be seen would not be carried into history. In that single moment, everything shifted. The ceremony did not end, but it could no longer continue as it had been planned. The air itself seemed different, filled with a quiet awareness that something important had taken place, something that would not be easily forgotten. And as the silence settled, one question remained, waiting just beneath the surface. What truth would be revealed once the doors closed and the real confrontation began? The confrontation and the lie. The palace doors closed softly, sealing away the noise and confusion that had filled the ceremony hall. Inside a private room, the air felt still, almost too still, as if it was waiting for something important to unfold. The calm outside no longer mattered here. This space held only truth, or what was about to be revealed as truth. William stood firm, his presence steady, his mind clear. Across from him, Camilla remained composed, her posture controlled, her expression calm in a way that seemed carefully maintained. The moment stretched quietly before either of them moved. There was no rush, no sudden words. Everything felt measured, as though both understood the weight of what was about to be said. The altered attire had already been removed from sight, taken away from the center of attention. Yet its presence still lingered in the room, not as fabric, but as meaning. It had already done enough to change the course of the day. Camilla began to speak with calm certainty. Her explanation followed the same path as before. She presented the change as a tribute, something gentle and respectful, meant to connect the past with the present. Her tone was steady, her words carefully chosen. On the surface, it sounded simple, even thoughtful. It was an explanation that could easily be accepted if nothing deeper was considered, but the room did not respond to the surface. William listened without interruption, his gaze steady, his expression unchanged. He allowed every word to settle, not because he believed it, but because he needed to hear it fully. The explanation moved smoothly, but it did not carry the depth that such a decision required. Time moved forward, and the moment it was meant for never arrived. The design remained hidden, untouched, and unspoken. It felt prepared, shaped to sound right, yet missing something real, and that absence did not go unnoticed. When he finally responded, his voice remained calm, but it carried a quiet strength. He did not raise his tone. He did not rush his words. Instead, he began to lay out what had already become clear to him. The design was not just a detail. It was a message. It was tied to something deeply personal, something that had never been meant for public display, let alone for someone else to use. As he spoke, the space between them seemed to shift. The calm that had held steady began to feel thinner, as if it could no longer fully support the moment. The explanation that had once sounded complete now faced something stronger. It faced understanding, and understanding made it harder to remain unchanged. William did not stop at the surface. He moved deeper, pointing out what the design truly represented. It was not about honoring the past. It was about reshaping it. It was about placing a new image where an old one had once been imagined. It was about standing in a position that carried meaning beyond the present moment. The more he spoke, the clearer it became that the truth could not remain hidden behind simple words. Camilla's composure held, but small shifts began to appear. They were not loud or sudden, but they were there. A pause that lasted slightly longer than expected. A glance that did not hold as steady as before. The calm remained, yet it no longer felt complete. The space around her seemed to carry a quiet tension, something that had not been there at the beginning. The explanation did not change, but it no longer felt strong enough to stand on its own. The deeper meaning had already been brought into the open. What had been presented as a tribute now faced a different understanding. It faced the idea that it had been something more, something planned with purpose beyond what had been said. William's final words were not loud, but they carried weight. The design was not just a choice, it was a statement. It showed, without needing to speak, who now stood in a place that had once belonged to another possibility. It was about legacy. It was about control. It was about making that position clear in a way that could not be easily questioned. The room fell into silence once more, but this silence was different. It was no longer waiting for answers. It was holding the truth that had already been revealed. Nothing more needed to be said. What had been hidden was now understood, even if it would never be spoken of outside those walls. The decision that followed was quiet, but firm. The altered attire would not return. It would be set aside, removed completely from the ceremony and from any public view. The moment it had nearly created would not be allowed to exist. In its place, something else would stand, something that did not carry the same hidden meaning. Outside the room, the palace slowly began to return to order. The ceremony would continue in a different form, guided by new decisions that would not be explained in full. To the public, the change would remain unclear, softened by careful words and controlled details. The deeper truth would stay hidden, kept within a small circle that understood what had truly taken place. But inside the palace, nothing felt the same. Trust had shifted, quiet but certain. The space between people had changed, shaped by what had been revealed and what had been left unsaid. The moment had passed, but its impact remained, settled into the walls, into the silence, into every careful glance that followed. The day moved forward, yet it carried a different weight. Something had been stopped, something that could have changed how the moment was remembered. And though it was no longer visible, it had already left its mark. As the palace settled into its new quiet, one final thought lingered, soft but unshaken.